Welcome, friends gathered in the sanctuary on Zoom and later on our YouTube channel. It is so good to be together as we celebrate the beginning of Pride Month. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Franklin, to the Smoky Mountains of Western North Carolina and Northeast Georgia, and the ancestral land of the Cherokee people. We're a lay-led congregation of progressive minds and caring connections. My name is Mary Teslow, and I'm delighted to be joined by Wendy Inglefield and Joe Eckstein as your service leaders this morning. We extend a warm welcome to those who may be visiting us today for the first time or returning after a while. We're so glad you're with us and look forward to getting to know you better. There will be an opportunity to introduce yourself later in the service, and you can sign up for our newsletter in the guest book in the foyer. As we gather in each Sunday, we take a moment to greet each other on Zoom and here in the sanctuary, affectionately the Zoomies and the Roomies. Roomies, please rise, embody your spirit for our wave hello, and stay standing for our gathering song. Our wave hello, Roomies, please turn and look to your right above the door to the camera. And our Zoomies will be waving back to us. And now our gathering song, Spirit of Life.
Oh
Thank you. We appreciate our Sunday service team, Warren, Becky, Ben, Edgar, and Penny on Zoom. And also our greeters and hospitality. We have potluck today, so everyone is contributing. Respiratory viruses have receded as the weather's gotten warmer, and we encourage folks to keep current on their vaccines and to participate via Zoom if you're not feeling well, or to keep all of us safe and healthy. We're reminded that we request anyone testing positive or significantly exposed to contact our president, Jude Lowry. Please be sure to keep up to date, checking the UU View, our website, and the bulletin board downstairs in Celebration Hall. Our celebration of diversity is reflected in the variety of our Sunday services. In addition to different topics, our service sequence and length sometimes varies. We hope today's service enriches your journey of discovery. As Unitarian Universalists, we're guided by our 7 principles. This morning we celebrate pride and our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And now Joe Eckstein, with his helper Melody, will start our service.
I've got a lovely little helper today. Before we start, I would like to thank this fellowship for their strong support of the LGBTQ community. Your strength, your love, and your support is so very welcome to all of us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our lightest chalice lighting. We light this chalice for the truth, light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment to justice, to courage, and to living our whole sacred lives. May this flame remind us our identities are divine, our journeys are worthy, and our love is holy. Our opening words are inspired by Reverend Teresa I. Soto. You do not have to be anyone other than yourself to belong here. You do not need to straighten your hair. You do not need to straighten your story. You do not need to straighten your truth. In this community, we believe in you. Your wholeness, your questions, your radiance, and your struggle. You are welcome here, not despite of who you are, but because of who you are. Our opening hymn is number 298, Wake Now My Senses.
Wake now my vision of ministry clear, brighten my pathway with radiance here, mingle my calling with all who will share, work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Our fellowship is a light of liberal religion in the mountains that values diversity and the richness that brings to our community. Please welcome our guest speaker, Mitchell Gold, and our own Wendy Inglefield.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mitchell Gold. He grew up in the suburbs of Trenton, New Jersey. After graduating from college, where he served as student council president, he worked for Bloomingdale's and became their furniture buyer. Together with his former partner, Bob Williams, who was a graphic designer for 17 magazine, they opened the Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams Furniture Company in Taylorsville, North Carolina, which at one point had 3 plants and 25 locations. Somewhere in there.
We had 1 million square feet in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
And 25 retail stores.
Okay. They also made upholstered furniture for Pottery Barn, Williams-Sonoma, Crate and Barrel, Restoration Hardware, all wonderful companies. And their company was really well run. They took great care of their employees. They offered health care, daycare, doggy daycare as well. No doggy daycare?
My dog came to work every day.
Yeah. And you had a gourmet chef on site?
Yes.
Right, okay. Well, growing up, Mitchell experienced tremendous anxiety and depression over his sexual identity, which at that time was categorized as a mental disorder to be treated with shock therapy. I'll let him tell you about coming out to his family. That I had a little thing in here that his mother was more upset that his boyfriend was not Jewish than that he was a boy. So, later, as the head of a furniture company in conservative rural North Carolina, his employees would approach him with questions about his homosexuality and how he reconciled that with the comments they were hearing from their preachers on Sunday mornings that homosexuality was a sin. So for many years, Mitchell has been leading a campaign against religion-based bigotry, the invocation of biblical authority to justify denying rights to individuals on the basis of their sexual identity. He has served on the Human Rights Campaign Board, started his own organization, Faith in America, and founded and served on the Truth, Faith, Doesn't Bully Committee of the Tyler Clementi Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to ending online and offline bullying in schools, workplaces, and faith communities. In addition, he compiled a book with his partner, Bob Williams, to display their furniture, The Comfortable Home. I've got a copy I brought in for everyone to see. Let's Get Comfortable in Who We Are, focusing on their furniture aesthetic. But Mitchell also co-edited Crisis, and it's an anthology of compelling coming out stories which reveal the hidden stories of depression and anxiety experienced by our youth and young adults, with much of that stress coming from religion-based bigotry. Inside that book, there are stories from Nate Berkus, Candace Gingrich, Barney Frank, and Richard Chamberlain. Mitchell's primary goal has been to develop communication with religious leaders who preach against the LGBTQ plus community, to open their eyes and get them to reflect on their biases and bases for their harmful beliefs. Do you want to add anything to that? Are you good?
Ask me questions.
Okay. All right. Can you share a little about your spiritual or religious background growing up?
Well, if you can't hear me, then just maybe raise your hand, but I'll try to project. Okay. Well, I grew up in a Reformed Jewish home. My parents were what would be called liberal, but more important than being called liberal, in their heart, They welcomed people of color into our home in the 1950s and 60s in a white neighborhood. We just lived a life where I saw how my parents conducted themselves as human beings, and they were kind and they were generous. But when I was in Sunday school, I just didn't get a lot of what was being talked about. And I know you're going to ask me about my LGBTQ identity or orientation, but what happened to me in 6th grade was I had started to understand that there was something wrong with me, that I had this same-sex attraction. And then reading it in Leviticus in Sunday school, I remember it like it was yesterday, sitting in Mrs. Haberman's class, sitting in the front as we were reading this, and I thought to myself, oh my God, that's me. Man shall not lay with man, shall be put to death kind of talk. And I wish that it had pushed me away from my religion, but it didn't at that point. I mean, I was too young, and you didn't even think about going against your religious teachings. So for years, for more than a decade, I lived with the idea that God hated me, that I did something wrong. So my religious travels at that point were not great. And the other things that really affected it were, I remember about the same age, I was going across the street to play with Johnny Farrell, who was Catholic, went to Catholic school. And as I was literally in the middle of the street, he came running out of his house saying, "Don't come on our property, don't come on our property, get away, you dirty Jew." And his mother, my therapist has told me not to talk about some of these things because it brings back such, and when I talk sometimes I really can think about these things and picture being in the middle of the street and hearing Johnny say that.
Well, you're in a safe space to talk about these things.
And his mother came out and said, "Johnny, what are you saying?" And he went on to say that at school, the nun told them about the Jews killing Christ, and that the Jews didn't accept Christ as their Savior. And I'll always remember his mother saying, "Oh, well, that's at school, but not here. We don't feel that way." And about the same time, about a year or two later, I was sitting watching TV with my mother in our den, and George Wallace was on TV. And he said, "Segregation now, segregation forever. It says it in the Bible." And I looked at my mother and said, "Does it say that in our Bible?" And she said, "No, that's not what we believe." So my religious upbringing was with a lot of conflict, and I really went for years, I'll say, hating religion and thinking that all religions taught these bad things, from including my Jewish religion to Christian religion.
Was it harder for you at that time to come out to your mother or father or brother?
Well, let me just back up a minute and just share with you the moment that I realized that I was gay, because it's kind of a cute story. Now that I look back on it. I was 11 years old, and Dr. Kildare was one of the hit TV shows. I see in the audience some of you might be mature like me. And it was like the 3rd episode, and I was so excited to come in from playing and to watch it. And as I watched it, and as he came on the screen, I realized, wait a minute, why am I so excited about Dr. Kildare coming on? Why I should be excited about the nurses, the pretty nurses. There's something wrong with me. And that is when I started to realize I had this problem, quote unquote. And for, as I said, more than a decade, I thought that God hated me. I grew up at a time when homosexuality was considered a mental disorder. And society, of course, wasn't accepting of it. So it was many years, a decade, of often crying myself to sleep, often thinking about taking my own life. A couple times I made some semblance of an attempt, but I couldn't do it. So I started to understand all of that. And then, literally in the early 70s, when I worked at Bloomingdale's as an assistant buyer in the blanket and pillow department, gal in the department next to me. She had this very heavy Long Island accent, Joan. And she came over and said, "Oh, Mitchell, look, there's Richard Chamberlain and his boyfriend Martin." My jaw dropped. First of all, there's Richard Chamberlain, who's pretty darn cute. And boyfriend Martin? She said, "Oh yeah, everybody knows he's gay. It's just not public, but people know." And that was a beginning of a realization for me that, oh, wait a minute, I could be gay in New York, because there's plenty of gays around, including my boss, my big boss. But when I go home to Trenton, I could be back in the closet. And I did that for some years. But of course, it's a horrible way to live every day, having to guard yourself and to make sure people, I spent years guarding my language and how I said what I did on the weekend and who I dated and things. And then there was this play, Torch Song Trilogy, on Broadway. And in the play, how many of you have seen it or seen the movie? Well, there's a scene in the play, it's about a Jewish boy and how he gets along with his mother. That's my mother's summary of the play. But anyway, and there's one scene in the play where the mother comes to visit him, and he doesn't, he lives in New York now. She lives, I think, in South Jersey or something. And he doesn't talk to her very often. He doesn't visit her very often. She's not part of his life. She doesn't accept him. So he has created a life for himself. Now, I must admit, he did it with a young Matthew Broderick, which I don't blame him for that. But he's created this loving life for himself. And his mother comes to visit, and she says something like, "Why don't you ever come to visit me? Why don't I see you that much anymore?" And he said to her, "Mom, look around. I've created a life for myself where I'm happy. I'm loved. I love others. If you can't find a way to accept me and to love me, I don't have room in my life for you." Pretty heavy.
Wow.
So I, shortly after seeing it, it had just come out on Broadway, and my boyfriend at the time had access to great tickets quickly for all the hit shows. And so like the week after that, I was home in Trenton, New Jersey, sitting at Green Acres Country Club with my parents and their friends, Sybil and Irv and Shirley and Howard, the usual cast of characters. And they were talking about, my mother used to organize these bus trips to New York to see Broadway plays. And they were talking about how they were going to go see this newest play, Torch Song Trilogy. And I sat back and I said, "Well, what do you think this play is about?" "Oh, it's about a Jewish boy and his mother and how they get along." I thought, oh man, it's gonna be something. So I told them I had seen it, and it was great. And my mother was also, bless her heart, as we say, she loved to be first to do things, to have the newest thing and stuff. So I went back and I called this broker that we had, and I got tickets for the following evening for Torch Song, like 10th row center orchestra. And I called my parents and said, "You're never going to believe this, but somebody gave me tickets." By the way, this is called the Bubba Mice, a little white lie in Yiddish that you're allowed because it's not hurting anybody. So I called my parents and say, "You're never going to believe this, but I got tickets for Torch Song Trilogy for tomorrow night, and I've already seen it, so I want you to go. You come into New York and go." Well, of course, my mother was thrilled that she would be able to see it before Sybil and Shirley. The next night after they'd seen it, I just have to collect myself for a minute.
It's okay.
The next night, my father, who I was scared to death, he was like on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being gay, 10 being straight, my father was an 11. There was not a woman that walked past that his eyes weren't roaming, and it was cute. But I was afraid of how he would react to me being gay. And he called me. And he said, "I just want to thank you for these tickets. And I want you to know that all I care about is that you're happy and healthy." And I was standing in this apartment that I had by this oak table, and I fell to the ground. And I started talking to him, and he said, "We don't need to talk about it." Did I say the part where my mother told me not to tell my father?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the other part of the story.
Yeah, this is actually, well, this is 2 years before. I forgot this part. I didn't forget, but out of order. 2 years prior to that, I did tell my mother I was gay because I thought for sure she would accept it. And she said to me, "Don't tell your father. He'll have a stroke. You'll kill him." Well, when you say that to a 22-ish-year-old person, it was devastating. I mean, it was just really heartbreaking to me. So I went back in the closet. So Torch Song Trilogy is how I came out, decided to come out so I wouldn't have to do it in person to my father. But when he called and said that to me, that was really super accepting and wonderful for me. And my brother, who was on the scale of 1 to 10, a 12, I was really afraid to tell him, but we were in a parking lot looking at a brick wall, and I said, "I have to tell you something, I'm gay." To which he said, "Oh, I knew that." And he opened the door and got out. And that was the end of it, and he was always incredibly accepting of me. That was my long answer.
Oh, no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So as your life went on, where did you find community? Did you find a source of confidence where you knew that this was my true north?
Yeah.
And that, you weren't going to allow people to shame you or push you? Was there a community you went to?
Well,
or
the lucky thing for
theology?
me is I was in New York working at Bloomingdale's in the 1970s. My boss was the buyer. His boss was the vice president, who was gay. His boss, who was the executive vice president of the store, he was gay. Marvin Traub was the CEO and the visionary and the brilliant mind that built Bloomingdale's in the 70s to be the hottest store in America and one of the hottest stores in the world. There was somebody in the late 70s who got AIDS, and Marvin kept him on the payroll until the day he died, kept him on medical coverage until the day he died. He set an example for being a straight ally.
That's
But
wonderful.
I saw there was a whole community of people, and then and then when we moved to North Carolina,
That's what I was going to ask
had
next.
some money in our pocket, and we were first of all moved to North Carolina. I was so naive about
The
the
different.
bigotry. It was incredible, but I learned. But as we started to have a more successful business, then a lot of the advocacy organizations, as well as Democrat politicians, but they kind of kept me on the down low. They didn't really want to be too associated with gay issues, but the gay advocacy organizations started coming around, asking for contributions and asking me to be part of a board and use some of my marketing prowess to help them. And I started to see that, man, these gay people are everywhere. In fact, I just have to tell you this quickly. I went to a wedding 2 weeks ago of a long-lost cousin, and we reconnected because I was invited to a funeral, and I said, "Don't invite me to a funeral, invite me to something nice." And he invited me to his daughter's wedding, who I didn't know. But I then see him. I haven't seen these people in 50 years. I haven't seen these cousins in 50 years. There are three brothers. So the one whose daughter got married, he has a lesbian daughter. Then I meet the older brother. He has a gay son. Then I meet the other brother, and of his 2 children, he's got a gay daughter. I mean, there's like gay people everywhere. So but I started to see there's a big community of people, and there's a big community of allies.
Oh, that's wonderful. So your marketing skills, you brought that to your organizations like Faith in America.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you have to really be able to disarm people, because they've got their defenses up.
Yeah.
And how do you open that door for conversations?
So I did a media training, I don't know how many years ago, with Bishop Gene Robinson. Bishop Gene Robinson was the first openly gay Episcopal bishop, if you remember his name. And we did a media training, and it was, I wanted to get this media training organized through the Human Rights Campaign and get a cadre of people who were willing to go on Fox, who were willing to go and do adversarial interviews. And I was filled with, I'm going to fight these people. I know how I'm going to do this. And when we started the media training, Bishop Gene Robinson said, when I walk into a room, because the question came up, how do you even walk into a room with these adversarial people? If I was being interviewed by Sean Hannity, how would I even walk into that room?
Right.
Because I'd be tense before I even began. And Gene said, when I walk into a room, I want to bring joy to the room. I want to bring peace and kindness to the room. That's how I want to talk to people. And boy, that really stuck with me. And by the way, I gave a speech somewhere in New York to hundreds of people, and he introduced me by saying that I was the only Jewish person he knew, to his knowledge, that had a personal bishop, and he was my personal bishop. So that's given me a kind of a framework of how to talk to people.
Okay.
So fast forward, it's now 2007. I'm like wanting to talk to people about these things. I'm figuring out more and more, learning in my community what it is that's hanging people up about gay rights and what's this whole marriage thing about. And somebody had suggested to read this book called The Righteous Gentiles of the Holocaust. It was by Reverend David Gushee. And in that book, he talks, it's like, how did Hitler rise to power? How did he come in the early 30s to say to his citizenry, Jews, they should not be able to own a business. They should not be able to hold public office. How did he get away with that? How did he get away with, as years progressed, these Jews, we got to move them out of town. We'll put them over there on the outskirts of town. And then eventually, we got to move them out altogether. How did he get away with that, with all the citizens around him letting him be like this to Jewish people, make them walk around with a star on their sleeve? And David Gushee's thesis was, because the church in Europe had taught for centuries that Jews were immoral, that they were sinners because they didn't accept Christ, that they, in fact, participated in killing Christ. But the real thing was that Jews were sinners. That's how he got away with it. And when I read that book, I was like, wow, that is what's happening in America. The people that I know at the factory that I talk to, the clergy that I speak to in town, they talk about me being a sinner. And I'm like, So David's book really opened my eyes to it. And me being the way that I am, I had a store in Atlanta, so I always have an excuse to go to Atlanta. And I tracked him down. He was at Mercer University. And I contacted him and said, I read your book, Righteous Gentiles of the Holocaust. I'm a history major in college. I studied the Holocaust in Europe. I visited concentration camps. I would love to visit with you and talk about the book. A little Bubba Misa, but okay. So we're talking about, 15, 20 minutes go on. He's the nicest man. He just is gentle. And as we're talking after so many minutes, I said to him, it's really interesting to me. You're a really nice guy. And he just looked at me. He said, thank you. And I said, no, you're really nice. Thank you. What do you mean? And I said, well, I've been reading about your position on marriage, and you say that you're for traditional marriage. And do you realize what that means to am I going off again? And it's a robocall. I said, do you realize what that means to a 14-year-old kid who has a same-sex attraction? That you're telling them that they're not entitled to have the emotional and physical intimacy that straight people are allowed to have? Just because they have a same-sex attraction, that's the way God created them? And he said, well, I believe in traditional marriage. And I said, yeah, but I want you to understand something. When you say traditional marriage to a 13-year-old, to a 15-year-old that's struggling with who they are, with understanding why they were created this way, this is the reason why kids jump off of bridges. This is the reason why kids hang themselves in a closet. This is the reason why LGBT kids are 8 times more likely to suffer depression, why they're 8 times more likely to have suicide ideation, why they're 8 times more likely than their straight counterparts to actually take their lives. And he just sat back and said, well, I don't want to be any part of that. But I'm a salesman, and I've learned you can't always close a sale on the first talk. So I just left it at that and let him think about it for a while. And then we kept in a little bit of communication. And then I can't remember, it was a year or so later, I was talking to him and he said, I have to tell you, when I met with you, I was starting to be on a journey. I was starting to feel that something wasn't right. And you really pushed me to a different point. And I told my sister, who's a little younger than me, at the time he was in his, I think, mid to late 40s and she was in her late 30s. And he said, I told my sister that I'm on a journey. And she said, oh, thank God, I'm a lesbian. And that, like many instances, is what changes people. So David then in, I think it was 2000, I can't remember, like 2014 or so, called me and said, I want you to read this book that I'm coming out with and read this article that I'm putting in the Washington Post called Changing Our Mind. And he wrote a book about changing his mind. So the answer to your question is, what I have found is to leave my anger outside. Because here's the other part of the David Gushee story that I love. A couple years later, I'm in Atlanta, meet him for lunch. And David, he had a little bit of a sullen complexion, is the way I would say it. And I'm having lunch with him, and he looked like he just had a facial. He was so happy. And he was telling me about how he lost a lot of friends, people that he had been in regular contact with, but that he had gained so many, and that he had kids writing him and telling him that he saved their life by saying that they were not sinners. He had parents saying to him that he saved their family because they no longer were going to reject their child. And he was telling me this, and I realized my talking to him, my talking to people and getting them to understand the harm that they are causing other people. Good people don't want to cause harm to other people. Now, there's complete crazy, horrible people like you know who, but there are a lot of people who really are, who have generosity and kindness in their hearts. I think there's a Bible verse where they know not what they do. A lot of people just don't understand what they're doing. So by telling them, sharing with them the harm that they're causing, I have found that if there's a silver bullet, that's the best silver bullet. There's other ones, when your own family comes out.
Yeah. In your collection of your anthology of stories of coming out, there's this beautiful one written by a young man named Jared, and he lived in Greenville, South Carolina, so just an hour away from us. He had a stepbrother who was gay and who was out in the open. Jared was gay, but he was terrified of coming out, mostly based on how he was raised, that homosexuality is a sin. And then his stepbrother ended up getting murdered because he was gay. And Jared just was full of regret that he hadn't been able to come out with the help of that stepbrother. But he did find a passage in the Bible that he said really helps him. He says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." I believe he is saying he created me as a gay man even before I was born. And about his stepbrother, he said, "I used to get mad seeing him so alive and having fun and not caring what people thought while I was still hiding. Now I wish there was a way to let him know what a role model he has been, since I won't have a chance to tell him in this life. I'll honor him by being who I am." That is all he ever wanted from people. So how did you get people to come out with their stories, and do you have a favorite one from the anthology?
Well, that particular story, what is so important about that, what I always take every opportunity to say is to people, because a lot of times when I did the book, I would do these book events in different cities, and it was fantastic. And in Charleston, in fact, there was, I don't know, 300 and some people, and this woman was in the back pacing. And afterwards, she came up when she could be private with me to tell me that she thought her son was gay, but she wasn't sure. He was like 12 years old or so. And that story really hit me because I said to her, if you think your child is gay, create a safe home for them. You don't have to say to them, are you gay? But what you could do is bring forward gay people and say, oh, so-and-so is gay. Look how happy they are. They have such a wonderful relationship. They're so smart. In fact, I work for now this company that I work with now, that I consult for, the CFO was telling me about his son that he thought was gay, and what he did was like he took him to see the Alan Turing movie. Alan Turing was the fellow who invented Enigma during World War II, and he was closeted gay. But he wanted his son to know that gay people make great achievements. And so I use that as a good example. The stories in the book are kind of like when people ask me what my favorite piece of furniture is.
Yeah.
And I give birth to every piece of furniture. There's no furniture in our collection that isn't something I've been involved with for a while and love it. That's why I put it out. These stories were really personal to me. My sister-in-law, who's an accomplished writer, editor, we did the book together. And we offered to people that they could either write their own story, and we gave them like about how many words it was, or that we would interview them. So, and then if they wrote it, then I was reading and editing with her. And I was running a $200 million plus company, so in my spare time, like 3 o'clock in the morning, I would be up reading these things. And I think one of the most interesting ones was Jim Hormel. Jim Hormel, as in Hormel spam and things like that. He actually went to private school in Asheville, but he became like one of the first openly gay ambassadors. And I asked Jim to be in the book, and he said that he would, but he would prefer that Mindy and I interview him. And we sat in my condo at the time in New York, and here was this very, very accomplished, wealthy man. And he was starting to tell his story about being in Asheville. I didn't realize that it would be so coincidental to this, that he would, and how he would cry himself to sleep, how he was like me. And we really got him talking. We got everybody talking. Joe Salmones, who was at the time the head of the Human Rights Campaign, really interesting guy, but so accomplished and sure of himself, and such a great speaker and so on. And after Mindy met with him alone, because of my relationship with him, I thought it better just for her to talk with him. He called me and he said, "When can Mindy come back for another therapy session?" He said, I haven't. So everybody got to really get their story out. And I'll just end with this other story. There's another Jared in there, Jared Horsford, who tried many times to take his life by cutting himself. And for those of you who don't know, sometimes when people cut themselves, they don't cut themselves all at once, but they start doing it, and they kind of think they're going to build up to this point where they can finally pull the blade. So he had been cutting himself, and I was really worried about him from this story. And I just felt he was so emotionally distraught in so many ways that I didn't know if he would ever be happy in life. And I've kept in touch with him a little over the last almost 20 years. He's got a boyfriend. I think they're married now. He's a successful landscaper. He's happy. And oh my gosh, that is like one of my favorites.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. What gives you hope these days for our youth?
I was speaking at the New York Historical Society a couple of years ago, and I was asked that question. In fact, I was being interviewed with David Gushee,
Okay.
which was interesting. And I was interviewed, and I was asked that question, and he talked about how he's a professor at university and how happy he is, and how what gives him hope is these young people are so open-minded and so on. And then it came to me, and I said, what gives me hope? Older people, more mature people. Look at this audience of people who care about other people, who are understanding, who know that homosexuality is not a sin, who would never tell a child that, who would vote for people who embrace the concept of equality and equity and fairness and kindness. Older people give me hope too.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to add or leave us with today? I didn't touch on the Tyler Clemente story, but if you all recall that Tyler was a young gay man who had not come out, and he went to college, and his roommate surreptitiously filmed him with another young man and then went public with it. And Tyler was so distraught, he took his own life because he'd been raised in a household, where homosexuality was considered a sin, but his mother, Jane, credits you for being the reason that she no longer sees it that way and why she left her church. So I think that's an
I'm
amazing.
difficult sometimes.
How on
if
earth
we have
did
time, I
you-
would like to tell you that story.
Yeah, how did you,
So,
we'll end with that then.
do you all remember, I think it was 2008 or 9 or 10, no, it was 2010, when Tyler had jumped off the George Washington Bridge. Remember hearing about that?
Yep.
Horrible. And an editor in the New York called me to ask me for a comment. And I said, I really don't want to comment publicly about it because I just have this really bad feeling about the whole thing. And I know this guy, and I knew he would not betray my confidence. And I said, what I really think about is, why would this kid, if he's being outed by his roommate, why wouldn't he go see his parents if he's distraught? Why wouldn't he go to his clergy for counseling? Because I, especially in Taylorsville, meet a lot of clergy who brag to me about how they counsel their, congregants. Not so great. But that's an unfair thing to say because there are really clergy who do counsel their congregants in a really great way. But anyway, I was wondering, why wouldn't this kid go to his clergy? And I tasked somebody with the assignment to find out what church this kid grew up in and what it was all about. Because I had heard that it was a non-denominational church. Now, for a liberal New York Jew, that means, non-denominational. They're not they're not really anything. No, doesn't mean that at all. It was, it was very, very anti-gay, conservative, whatever you want to call it. So in my mind, I wanted to meet these parents. And some months later, Shelley Wright, who's a country singer, who came out, I was involved with her process, she had met the son of Jane Clemente. So I, through him, gave him a copy of Crisis, and gave him a copy for his parents, and for the one for Jane and Joe, I earmarked certain chapters because I just wanted them to naturally go to them. And then I get a call one day, she'd like to meet me.
Wow.
So I went out to their home and sat on the sofa where she sat with Tyler when he said to her that he was gay, and she said to him, "Oh, that's okay. You can still be a Christian." I might not be quoting exactly right, but I think this is pretty close. "You can still be a Christian, and we can get you counseling at church." And this kid was 18 years old. He was smart as a whip, going to Rutgers University to become an engineer, great violin player. He's a smart kid. He had prayed his gay away for 5 or 7 years or so. He'd been through it. There's no going to the counselor at church. That is a mark of rejection.
I think the worst thing that some churches do is say it is a sin, but we have compassion or grace, or we'll forgive you, and but there's still,
Yes.
it's a
Love
sin.
the sinner, hate
That's
the sin.
the most insidious.
It's insidious,
Yeah.
exactly. So, so when she was telling me about when she told Tyler, and the word, I know what it was. And then it came out sometime later that he had confided in his best friend, that he came out to his parents and his mother rejected him. She said she was disappointed. That's what it was. She was disappointed, and we could get counseling. And then he felt rejected, and that's why he obviously couldn't go to his parents. So very carefully over time, I've talked to Jane about this, and I've encouraged her. I mean, it's really hard. Look, I feel guilty. My dog died January 3rd. It crushed me. I did everything I could for that. It was a disabled dog.
Elsie?
I did everything. Elsie.
Was it
I
Elsie?
did everything I could
Yeah.
for Elsie.
She was in a little wheelchair for her back legs.
And Elsie was C period for little champ, because she just went on with life. But I felt guilty because, maybe I could have taken her to the vet sooner when her kidney started to fail, but it was New Year's Eve, and maybe I could have done this, maybe I could have done that. You just do the best you can in life, and there are things that you regret, and there's nothing wrong with regret. And I was trying to explain that to Jane also, that there's nothing wrong with regretting, but now let's take this and do something great with it, because her story can save kids' lives. Her story can save families, and she has bravely put her foot in that water and speaks about it.
It's wonderful.
And the key is you got to tell kids as clear as you can that it's not a sin. And let me just go on to say that there's other clergy that I've been involved with who have called me like, I'm going to write this article, I'm going to do this, and then they let me read it ahead of time. And the thing that I keep coming back to them and saying is, don't dance around the issue. Say it as clear as you can. You do not believe that homosexuality is a sin, because to a 15-year-old kid whose mind is so cluttered and so scared and so uncomfortable and emotional, just say it as clear as you can to that kid that you believe in that kid 100%. So this is how I would like to end,
Okay.
if I can. There's a place for us. Somewhere a place for us. Remember that song? There's a time for us. Someday a time for us. Someday, somewhere. I just heard it last night, and it really
I
stuck
sent
in
you
my mind.
a little clip of the documentary they're making about 4 gay Jewish men writing West Side Story.
Oh my gosh. I didn't get it quite from that, but
Okay.
very interesting.
It's so
And
funny. Rebecca
so-
sent it to me, and I sent it on to you.
So, someday, somewhere, and my answer is today. Today is the time and place for us to educate people with kindness, because we are in a really serious situation in this country, not just for LGBT people, but my God, for immigrants. What happened to welcome the stranger? What happened to love thy neighbor? There's Republican Christians, and then there's the rest of Christians, if you will, and there's all kinds of people of good faith. We have to keep talking to them and do it with such kindness and generosity, because as I said to you with Reverend Gushy, he wasn't a mean, horrible person. He didn't deserve me to sit there and yell at him, but rather to share with him some real life stories that I had and get him on a different path. And he is the happiest, most fabulous person now.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mitchell. Appreciate it.
Mitchell, thank you so much for the great blessing of having you here, and to Wendy for inviting you. It's been a really, really moving and important experience. Thank you so, so much. Our words of gratitude: we're grateful to Mitchell for many reasons, but one is for donating his honorarium and travel to local LGBTQ plus groups. Worship had decided to split the money between our emerging PFLAG chapter and the little free pantry at Rick Tarleton's downtown fitness center. When I chatted with Rick, he said, "Oh, please give all of it to our emerging PFLAG chapter." So we're delighted to do that this morning. And we'd like to invite Michelle Evans, who is the interim president of the PFLAG chapter, to say a few words for us.
Hi. PFLAG is a group that formed in 1972 by the mother of a gay son who was an activist in his community. He was injured during a protest at Stonewall Inn and the subsequent riots. Her response was to form an advocacy group for the family and friends of the queer community. There can be a variety of reasons to join PFLAG. I first experienced PFLAG as the mom of a gay teen son. I went there to learn. I learned a lot from the other parents' experiences. I learned from members of the queer community. Some said they attended because they enjoyed being able to relax with a non-judgmental group of people. Some said they attended to help inform family members who wanted to do their best. Now, I'm the mother of a grown gay son who has made a good life for himself and has a wonderful partner. Of course, I only want the best for them, and I'm concerned about the world we find ourselves in and how it will impact them. So now I participate in PFLAG to advocate for a better world for them. We hope to welcome you to our fledgling group and learn more about how we can support each other in this community. If you'd like to join us and need contact information, I'm going to have this flyer downstairs after the service, email info, Facebook info. We would love to have you join us. Currently, we have monthly Zoom meetings. We hope to expand from there. So we look forward to meeting some new people and joining our group.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. We're also grateful for all the diverse gifts of time, talent, and treasure that are given by so many in love and in hope. Please give generously to the life and work of this beloved community. Now, please join me in the dedication of our gifts. All gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope. So may it be. Thank you for your support. All financial gifts are appreciated. There is an offering plate at the entry to the sanctuary, and there are also stamped addressed envelopes to mail. Donations are also welcome electronically, including our PayPal link on our website and in the UU View. There is also a celebration jar right here and a basket for coffee donations downstairs in Celebration Hall. For our visitors, it is a joy to welcome visitors this morning. If you would like to introduce yourself, please raise your hand to see if anyone's on Zoom who's a visitor. We are all known to each other, so that's wonderful there. If there's anyone in the sanctuary who would like to introduce yourself, please raise your hand, and one of our greeters will come with a handheld microphone. Wonderful. I think we've got everybody. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. We take this moment to reflect on our joys and concerns and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. If you'd like, you're welcome to share a brief special joy or concern, and I'll drop a pebble into the water. We'll begin with those on Zoom, and we'll follow with those in the sanctuary. If there's those in the sanctuary, we'd like you to line up over here by the piano. A last final pebble as we remember those who have spoken, those who have been named, and those we hold in silence in our hearts. We now invite you to a minute of silence. You can choose to meditate, pray, reflect on something you've heard here today, or simply sit silently in community with others, and I'll bring you back with the chimes. And now I'd like to invite Joe back up to close our service. Melody, come be with me.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say how wonderful the service was today. You can feel the unity, you can feel the joy, and you can feel the togetherness that we have today. And thank you, everybody, for that. I really feel it. Our closing words. May we leave this space knowing that love makes room for all of who we are. May we carry forward the courage to live authentically, the compassion to honor others' truths, and the faith that we're never alone on this journey. Go in peace, go in pride, go in love. Our closing hymn is number 1053, How Could Anyone?
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you more connected to my soul.
Since Barbara is the resident lesbian, I guess I'm the resident gay guy. So. We extinguish this flame, but not the fire of truth, the warmth of community, or the light of love. These we carry forward in every heart that beats with courage, in every ally that stands in solidarity, in every soul who dares to live authentically. As we leave the space, may we carry the pride that unites us, the love that sustains us, and the commitment that calls us to action. Together, we walk forward in hope. Together, lighting the way with justice. Together, until every person is safe, seen, and celebrated. Good, thank you.
Thank you, sweetie. Thank you for joining us today. Following service, those on Zoom are invited to continue the conversation, and those in the sanctuary are invited down to potluck in Celebration Hall. Next week, we welcome back Rod McDonald, along with potluck, and a message and music. A preview song will reintroduce him to you. I'd love to be wrong.
I'd love to be wrong, but here's what I see. Millions of people, eyes glued to the TV. They have no idea what's about to come down. They think it's a game show with celebrity clowns. It's gonna get ugly, the stench will be strong. But hey, like I said, I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong, but here's what I feel. The working man thinks he's gonna get a good deal, when all they're gonna do is enrich themselves, carve out some new breaks and screw everyone else. You better not get sick or your money's all gone. But hey, like I said, I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong, but it seems very plain. Betraying one's country for one's private gain is a game the authorities ought to stop this very hour. But they're doing nothing, they just want more power, so they can finally take it all away. Your health, your retirement, your bright sunny day, your wilderness, your freedom to love who you please, your public school system, your kids' chance to succeed, your right to speak freely, your right to belong. But hey, like I said, I'd love to be wrong. To be wrong, I'd love to relax, I'd love to invent my own set of facts. But I think facts should be true, so I can't agree that what you imagine is at all real to me. I'd love to be wrong, see everyone free, instead of having your freedom be punishing me. I'm expecting more rain, much bigger floods, more corporate judges, more morons in trucks taking over the streets, waving their guns. Small countries invaded by much bigger ones. The free world in crisis, its leader denying he's already been paid off for those bullets flying. And when it all falls apart and they start to crack down on the weak and the helpless, will you just go along? Well, I hope you don't mind my little song, but hey, like I said, I'd love to be wrong.
Please please rise in body or spirit. Those in the sanctuary may choose to hold hands for our covenant. Yay. A wonderful amoeba-like organism here. All right, are we all set? Yay. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and community is its goal. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. So may it be. And now let's wave goodbye. If the roomies turn to your right, and we'll wave goodbye.